Ladies and gentlemen, the first step in dealing with people who constantly bring you down is to recognize the pattern of their behavior. This may sound simple, but it often isn't. Many of us are conditioned to overlook or excuse toxic behavior, especially when it comes from someone close to us. Whether it's a friend who always criticizes your choices, a colleague who never misses a chance to make a sarcastic comment, or a family member who consistently undermines your confidence, the negativity can become so familiar that it feels normal. But just because something is familiar doesn't mean it's healthy. People who bring you down often operate subtly at first. Their words might be masked as jokes, constructive criticism, or concern. They may say things like, "I'm just being honest," or "Don't take it so seriously," after a cutting remark. These are signs of emotional manipulation comments that are designed to lower your self-esteem while allowing the speaker to deny any responsibility. Learning to notice these cues is essential in identifying whether someone's influence on you is toxic. Another pattern to watch for is how you feel after interacting with this person. Do you frequently leave the conversation feeling confused, anxious, inadequate, or emotionally drained? Your emotions are strong indicators of whether someone is affecting your mental well-being. If you find yourself doubting your worth or questioning your abilities after spending time with a certain individual, that's a sign something deeper may be happening. Keep track of repeating behaviors, not just isolated incidents. Anyone can have a bad day and say something unkind, but consistent negativity is different. It could be someone who always highlights your mistakes but never your successes, or someone who constantly compares you to others in a way that makes you feel less than. When this becomes a pattern, it's no longer a coincidence, it's a habit, and often a deliberate one. Recognizing the pattern also involves understanding how they speak to others, not just to you. People who bring others down often have a negative outlook overall. They might gossip constantly, criticize others behind their backs, or speak with a tone of bitterness or jealousy. If they do it to others, chances are they're doing it to you too, or perhaps in more subtle or targeted ways. Observing how they treat everyone gives you valuable context. It's also important to notice timing and triggers. Are there specific moments when their negativity shows up more? For example, do they act colder or more critical when you succeed or share good news? Do they downplay your achievements right when you're feeling confident? These are not random moments, they're signs that your success or joy may be triggering something in them, leading them to try to level the emotional playing field by bringing you down. Sometimes the pattern is emotional rather than verbal. They may withhold support, give you the silent treatment, or suddenly become distant when you need them most. This emotional withdrawal is a passive-aggressive tactic used to assert control or punishment. Again, recognizing this behavior as a pattern is key. It's not just a bad week or misunderstanding if it happens over and over again. Lastly, trust your instincts. If something always feels off around someone, even if you can't quite put your finger on it, pay attention. Our subconscious often picks up on unhealthy dynamics before our logical brain can explain them. Don't dismiss that gut feeling. Recognizing the pattern is the first and most important step to reclaiming your peace, protecting your energy, and taking back control from the people who try to chip away at your spirit. One of the most freeing realizations you can have when dealing with people who bring you down is this: it's not about you. Most of the time, the hurtful things people say or do are projections of their own pain, insecurities, frustrations, or unresolved trauma. It's easy to internalize their negativity and start questioning your own worth, but once you understand that their behavior is more about what's going on inside them than anything you did, you begin to take your power back. People who constantly criticize others often struggle with low self-esteem themselves. They may see your growth, confidence, or joy as a threat or a painful reminder of what they feel they lack. Instead of looking inward and doing the hard work of healing or improving themselves, they project that discomfort outward, usually at the people closest to them. So, When someone brings you down, they're not offering an accurate reflection of you, they're holding up a mirror to their own insecurities. It helps to consider the concept of emotional projection. When someone feels inferior, anxious, jealous or out of control, they often unconsciously project those emotions onto others. For example, a person who feels like a failure might constantly point out your flaws so they don't have to face their own. Someone who's afraid of not being good enough may tear down your achievements to convince themselves they're not falling behind. It's a defense mechanism, a way for them to shift the discomfort away from themselves. This isn't to excuse toxic behavior, but rather to understand it. Seeing people's actions through the lens of compassion and psychology gives you clarity and distance. You realize their words are not divine truths about your character. They are emotional outbursts wrapped in criticism, and if you absorb them without filtering, you will carry a burden that was never yours to hold. Another layer of this point is recognizing how jealousy and comparison play a role. Some people become bitter when others are happy or successful, not because they hate you, but because they hate how they feel about themselves in comparison. Your shine exposes their shadow. Your progress highlights their stagnation. So rather than celebrate you, they subtly or overtly undermine you. It's not personal, it's their own internal war. It's also important to notice that people tend to repeat the patterns they've experienced. Someone who was constantly criticized growing up might now repeat that behavior toward others. Hurt people hurt people. That doesn't make their actions acceptable, but it helps you understand that their criticism may be more about their past than your present. You just happen to be the one standing in front of them when their old wounds were triggered. Knowing it's not about you also helps you stay emotionally grounded. Instead of reacting with anger, guilt or self-doubt, you can step back and view their behavior objectively. You're no longer trying to fix yourself in response to their moods or prove your worth to someone who's not capable of seeing it. You stop absorbing their energy and start protecting your own. That emotional separation is essential for your mental peace. And perhaps most importantly, when you accept that it's not about you, you stop shrinking yourself to avoid triggering others, you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable. You realize that no matter how small you make yourself, someone who's committed to seeing the worst in you will still find something to criticize. So why not just keep being fully, unapologetically you? Setting boundaries is not about building walls to keep people out, it's about creating healthy emotional limits to protect your peace and well-being. When someone regularly brings you down, it becomes absolutely essential to establish clear lines between what you will and will not accept. Boundaries are how we teach others how to treat us. They're not rude, they're necessary. Without them, we end up absorbing negativity, tolerating mistreatment, and compromising our self-worth just to keep the peace. Many people struggle with setting boundaries, especially if they've grown up in environments where their feelings were dismissed or where saying no led to guilt or punishment. If you're a people pleaser or naturally empathetic, it's even harder. But the truth is, you can be kind and firm at the same time. Setting boundaries doesn't make you mean it, makes you responsible for your own emotional health. It's a form of self-respect, and it tells others that you value yourself enough to protect your space. One of the first signs that a boundary needs to be set is when you start feeling resentful. That feeling is often a signal that you allowed someone to cross a line. Maybe you stayed silent when you should have spoken up, or tolerated behavior that left you emotionally drained. Resentment is a build-up of all the yeses you gave when you really wanted to say no. The only way to break this cycle is to start defining what is and isn't acceptable to you. Setting boundaries starts with clarity. You have to know what behaviors make you feel uncomfortable, unsafe, or emotionally depleted. Is it constant criticism, passive-aggressive comments, unsolicited advice? Once you know what the triggers are, you can be specific about your limits. For example, I'm not okay with being spoken to in that tone. Or, I need to end this conversation if it continues down this path. It's not about controlling others, it's about controlling your response to protect your inner peace. Another important part of boundary setting is consistency. It's not enough to set a boundary, once you need to reinforce it when it's tested, and it will be tested. People who are used to taking advantage of your kindness or pushing your emotional limits may resist or even guilt trip you when you start standing your ground. Don't let that scare you into backing down. Staying consistent shows you're serious, and eventually those who respect you will adjust. Those who don't, that tells you everything you need to know. A major aspect of boundaries is learning to be okay with discomfort. Setting a boundary might cause temporary tension, awkwardness, or even confrontation, but that's okay. Discomfort is a small price to pay for long-term emotional freedom. If your goal is to never rock the boat, you'll drown trying to keep others comfortable while neglecting your own needs. Growth requires courage, and part of that courage comes from being willing to have hard conversations for the sake of your own mental and emotional health. It's also important to realize that boundaries are not just verbal, they're behavioral. Sometimes the most powerful boundary is distance. You don't owe everyone constant access to you. You can limit time with someone, take longer to reply, or choose not to engage in certain conversations. Emotional and physical space is a legitimate form of self-care. And if someone continually violates your boundaries, despite your clarity and consistency, it may be time to re-evaluate their role in your life. Boundaries are not a punishment, they're a protection plan. They allow you to stay connected to people without losing yourself in the process. You're not being selfish by prioritizing your mental health, you're being wise. You're not creating conflict, you're creating clarity. And the more you practice setting boundaries, the more natural and empowering it becomes. One of the most powerful things you can learn when dealing with people who bring you down is the art of not reacting. It's easy to get pulled into their drama, provoked by their words, or tempted to defend yourself when they say something hurtful or sarcastic. But this is where emotional discipline comes in. Not every comment deserves a response. Not every insult requires a comeback. When you stop taking the bait, you reclaim your power. Toxic people often thrive on reaction, that's their fuel. They poke, prod and provoke because they want to feel in control. They want to shift your mood, disrupt your peace and throw you off balance. The moment you engage, whether through anger, frustration or defensiveness, you are playing into their hands. But if you stay calm, collected and indifferent, you send a different message. You're not emotionally available for manipulation. Learning not to take the bait requires a shift in perspective. You begin to see their behavior as a pattern rather than a personal attack. You realize this isn't the first time they've acted this way, and it probably won't be the last. So why keep getting drawn into the same cycle? Stepping back mentally gives you room to breathe. It lets you observe rather than absorb. It gives you the emotional maturity to respond wisely rather than impulsively. That doesn't mean you let disrespect slide, it means you address it strategically. Sometimes silence is more powerful than words. Sometimes walking away is more effective than arguing. When you refuse to feed the fire, it eventually dies down. People who rely on getting a rise out of others get bored when their tactics stop working. Your calmness becomes your shield. Your lack of reaction becomes your quiet rebellion. It also helps to recognize your triggers. What specific phrases or tones make you want to snap back or prove your point? What emotional buttons do they press that make you feel defensive or insecure? Becoming aware of these patterns gives you control. Once you know how you typically react, you can create a new, healthier response. You can take a pause, take a breath and choose your peace over their chaos. And let's be honest, some people bait you just to make themselves feel superior. It's a power play. They might use subtle jabs, passive-aggressive comments, or public embarrassment to get under your skin. But when you show that you're not rattled, you're not only protecting your inner calm, you're exposing their weakness. People who need to tear others down to feel strong reveal more about their own insecurity than anything else. There's a kind of quiet confidence that comes with not needing to prove anything. When you don't take the bait, you are sending the message, I know who I am, I don't need your approval, and I won't waste my energy on your games. That confidence is disarming. It shifts the dynamic entirely. You are no longer reacting to someone else's storm, you become the calm eye in the middle of it. Ultimately, not taking the bait is about protecting your emotional energy. Every time you respond to negativity, you give away a piece of your peace. You allow someone else to dictate your emotions. But when you resist that pull, you stay centered, you remain in control. And over time, you will find that you're not just avoiding unnecessary conflict, you're creating a life that values calm, clarity, and self-respect above the noise. One of the most liberating realizations you can have when someone constantly brings you down is this: it's not about you. People who make a habit of belittling, criticizing or undermining others are often acting out of their own unresolved pain, insecurity or frustration. Their behavior is a reflection of their inner world, not yours. When you begin to internalize this truth, their words and actions stop carrying so much weight. It's natural to take things personally. We all do it, especially when the attack feels targeted or when it comes from someone close to us. But often, what seems like a personal attack is actually just projection. People project their own fears, failures and self-doubt onto others because it's easier than confronting themselves. If someone feels inferior, they may try to tear others down to level the playing field. If they feel invisible, they might criticize you just to be noticed. Think about it. Happy, confident, emotionally healthy people don't go around dragging others down, they don't need to. They're secure in themselves. They lift others up because they're not threatened by anyone else's light. So when someone constantly tries to diminish you, it says a lot more about their mindset than it does about your worth. Once you understand that their behavior is rooted in their pain, not your flaws, you can start detaching emotionally from their negativity. This shift in perspective doesn't mean you have to excuse toxic behavior, it means you can respond with clarity instead of confusion. You stop asking, "What did I do wrong?" and start asking, what might they be struggling with that's causing them to act this way. It's not about becoming their therapist, it's about refusing to carry emotional baggage that isn't yours. You stop internalizing insults that were never about you to begin with. When you internalize someone else's negativity, it can deeply affect your self-image and confidence. You start questioning your abilities, your value, even your identity. But when you remind yourself, this isn't about me, you take back your mental space, you shield yourself from emotional sabotage. You become like a mirror reflecting their words back to them without letting them sink in. Their storm might rage, but it won't soak into your soul. It also helps to consider what that person's life looks like behind closed doors. Maybe they're battling insecurities they never talk about. Maybe they were raised in an environment where criticism was normal. Maybe they don't know how to communicate without hurting others. While none of these things excuse their actions, they do help you understand the roots of the behavior, which makes it easier to disengage emotionally rather than feel personally attacked. You can even start to feel a kind of quiet compassion, not necessarily for the person's actions, but for the pain that might be driving them. Compassion doesn't mean tolerance. It means you recognize that hurt people often hurt others. And that recognition allows you to step back emotionally, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. You're no longer reacting to their bitterness, you're observing it for what it is, a cry from someone who hasn't healed. Knowing it's not about you is a mindset shift that can change everything. It empowers you to move through life with a thicker skin and a softer heart. You become less reactive, more grounded, and more in control of your emotional state. Instead of shrinking in the face of criticism, you stand tall with the knowledge that other people's behavior is a reflection of them, not a definition of you. Your energy is one of your most valuable assets, and learning how to protect it especially from those who constantly bring you down, is a critical act of self-respect. People who are emotionally draining, overly negative, or manipulative can slowly wear down your mental strength without you even realizing it. It can start subtly through backhanded compliments, persistent complaining, or constant criticism, but over time, these interactions take a real toll. That's why protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's survival. When someone repeatedly dumps their negativity onto you, it's like they're handing you their emotional garbage and expecting you to carry it. If you're not intentional about protecting yourself, you can find yourself emotionally exhausted, anxious, or even physically drained without knowing why. That's because your energy has been leaking into a space that doesn't serve you. Creating boundaries, emotional, mental, and sometimes physical, is your way of saying, I won't carry what isn't mine. Protecting your energy doesn't always mean cutting people off entirely, though sometimes that's necessary. More often it means creating healthy distance. You can still care about someone without giving them access to your inner peace. You can still speak with them without absorbing their chaos. That might look like limiting conversations, avoiding certain topics, or simply not answering that call when you know it'll leave you feeling worse. Distance isn't cold, it's a form of preservation. It also means being selective about where you spend your time and who you allow into your emotional space. If you surround yourself with people who constantly drain you, criticize you, or make you feel small, it becomes harder to thrive. But when you invest in relationships that are uplifting, respectful, and rooted in mutual support, you recharge instead of deplete. Who you let into your energy field directly shapes the quality of your life. Self-awareness is a key part of energy protection. You need to regularly check in with yourself and ask, how do I feel after spending time with this person? Do I feel seen, heard and valued, or do I feel dismissed, judged or invisible? Do I feel energized or drained? These answers reveal a lot about whether a relationship is nourishing or toxic. And the more honest you are with yourself, the easier it becomes to protect your emotional well-being. Another powerful part of protecting your energy is learning to say no without guilt. People who bring others down often rely on others being too polite, too accommodating, or too afraid of confrontation to stand up for themselves. But no is a complete sentence. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace. Whether it's declining an invitation, avoiding a toxic conversation, or setting boundaries around how you want to be treated, saying no is a radical act of self-care. And sometimes, the person you need to protect your energy from isn't someone else, it's your own inner critic. When people bring you down, it's easy to start internalizing their voice and repeating their negativity in your own mind. That's why it's so important to cultivate an inner dialogue that's kind, compassionate, and grounded. You can't always control what others say or do, but you can control how you speak to yourself. Defend your energy from the outside world and your inner world. Ultimately, protecting your energy is about taking back your power. It's about choosing what you allow in, what you engage with, and what you release. It's about creating a life where peace is prioritized and toxicity is not tolerated. It's not a one-time decision, it's a practice, a discipline, and a mindset. And the more you commit to it, the stronger, freer, and more emotionally balanced you become. Assertiveness is one of the most important tools you can develop when dealing with people who constantly bring you down. It's not about being aggressive or confrontational, it's about standing up for yourself with clarity, confidence, and respect. Being assertive allows you to express your needs, boundaries, and feelings without fear or apology. It's how you communicate that you won't tolerate being belittled, disrespected, or manipulated while still maintaining your dignity. Many people struggle with assertiveness because they were never taught how to speak up in a healthy way. Some were raised to be overly accommodating or to avoid conflict at all costs. Others were told that speaking up makes them rude or difficult. But the truth is, Assertiveness is not about being minutes, about being honest and self-respecting. When you practice it, you show others how you expect to be treated and you teach them that your boundaries are not negotiable. It starts with using your voice literally and figuratively. When someone makes a hurtful comment or tries to undermine you, it's okay to say, "That was unnecessary," or "I don't appreciate being spoken to that way." These simple statements might feel awkward at first, but they send a clear message. You're no longer silently absorbing the negativity or calmly calling it out. And often, that shift is enough to disrupt the pattern and make the other person think twice before doing it again. Assertiveness also means learning to say no and meaning it. People who bring others down often thrive on control, guilt or manipulation. If you are not assertive, they will push past your comfort zone repeatedly. But when you start saying, "No, I'm not available for that," or "I'm not comfortable with this conversation," you reclaim your autonomy. You stop giving them permission to dominate your time, energy or emotional space. It's also about body language and tone. Assertiveness isn't just in the words you speak, but in how you carry yourself. Stand tall, maintain eye contact, and speak with a calm, steady voice. Avoid fidgeting or apologizing for your boundaries. Your presence can either reinforce or weaken your message. When your words and body align, people are more likely to take your boundaries seriously and treat you with the respect you're asking for. And keep in mind that assertiveness isn't about changing other people, it's about changing how you engage with them. Some people will never adjust their behavior, no matter how respectfully you assert yourself. That's okay. The goal is not to fix them, it's to protect yourself. By consistently setting boundaries and speaking up, you create a healthier environment for yourself, whether they choose to grow or not. Being assertive also helps you maintain your self-esteem. Every time you stand up for yourself, you reinforce the belief that your feelings matter and that you deserve respect. Over time, this builds confidence and self-trust. You begin to rely on your own voice instead of seeking external validation. And that inner strength becomes a powerful shield against anyone who tries to bring you down. The more you practice assertiveness, the more natural it becomes. Like any skill, it takes time to develop. You might stumble, second-guess yourself, or feel uncomfortable at first, but don't let that stop you. Every conversation where you choose to honor your truth over silence is a step toward personal empowerment. And eventually, asserting yourself won't feel like a battle. It'll feel like a habit, a boundary, and a form of peacekeeping you never knew you needed. When you're surrounded by people who bring you down, one of the most powerful responses isn't to fight them, it's to rise above them. Focusing on your own growth is about shifting your energy away from negativity and toward personal evolution. It's choosing to invest in your potential instead of wasting time and emotional bandwidth trying to win the approval of people who are determined not to see your worth. This shift in focus allows you to reclaim your power and put it into building a better, stronger, wiser version of yourself. Personal growth looks different for everyone. For some, it might mean developing new skills or diving deeper into passions that fuel their purpose. For others, it could involve healing from trauma, working on emotional resilience, or learning how to set boundaries. The key is to recognize that you are not defined by the limitations others place on you. When people try to keep you small, it's often because they are uncomfortable with your growth. But their discomfort is not your responsibility. It's their reflection, not your truth. Focusing on your growth means refusing to let negativity distract you from your path. It's easy to get caught up in the drama, the criticism, the passive-aggressive remarks, or the sabotage, but when you choose growth, you choose your future over their noise. You begin to see their attempts to bring you down not as personal attacks, but as signs of their own internal battles. Instead of shrinking in response, you stand taller. You keep moving forward. And every step you take is a reminder that their approval is not your oxygen. Another powerful aspect of focusing on your growth is becoming your own biggest supporter. When others try to dim your light, you become the one who keeps it burning. This means developing self-discipline, cultivating a positive inner voice, and creating routines that support your goals. Whether it's reading, journaling, meditating, or working on a business or creative project, the more you invest in yourself, the less influence toxic people have over your sense of identity. Your focus shifts from, what do they think of me, to, how can I be better than I was yesterday? Sometimes, growth also means letting go of people, places, habits, and beliefs that no longer serve you. This can be painful, especially if you've spent years trying to earn someone's acceptance or validation. But your loyalty should never cost you your peace. When you focus on your growth, you learn that it's okay to outgrow relationships that keep you stuck. Not everyone is meant to go with you to the next chapter. Some people are only part of your story to teach you who you don't want to be. As you grow, your perspective begins to change. You start to see that the opinions of others, especially those who try to drag you down, are often rooted in their own fear, envy, or insecurity. You begin to detach from their projections and stay grounded in your purpose. Growth gives you clarity. It helps you differentiate between constructive feedback and plain sabotage. And it gives you the strength to walk away from situations that no longer align with your values or goals.